Good afternoon, everyone. Councilmember Steve Rao with the town of Morrisville, and I want to welcome you to our my first virtual town hall. So in the new normal, I'm having to change the way I interact with my constituents, and so I want to thank my team for working with me to organize this. And today we have a very special guest, someone that I'm going to introduce in a minute. I want to let everyone know I'm wearing purple. Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Week starts this month, and my colleague Liz Johnson, she's actually starting it's a stride run tomorrow, but it's a virtual run to raise money for pancreatic cancer. So I'll be shooting some information, but I always wear purple when I'm with her during this week, and and she may be joining later, but want to wish her all the best. So I'm going to now, basically, the reason for this first town hall was, business is really, really tough right now. We just received news that the $350 billion of stimulus money has run out, and 55% of our revenue in the town of Morrisville is commercial revenues, so great restaurants, businesses, entrepreneurs. And so I really wanted to bring somebody whose feet is on the ground, that's a real leader in our state in economic development, and that person is the man I'm about to introduce, John Loyack. John is a close friend of mine, along with his boss and colleague, Chris Chung. And he is the head of global services, business services for the EDPNC. And the EDPNC is basically a consolidated effort of consolidating the marketing and recruitment functions of the state. It was created a few years ago. Chris Chung is the CEO. And in his role, John Loyack basically oversees the small business development relationships, the international trade offices. He also oversees the regional economic partnerships for the state. And I'm actually going off my photographic memory, because if I was reading his resume, we'd be here for a while longer. But from one salesman to the next, because I'm also a sales BD guy in the tech industry, he's an outstanding salesperson. And we're very lucky in North Carolina to have Chris Chung and John Loyack and these great leaders working with our Commerce Secretary, Tony Copeland, and our governor to make sure that we're growing business. And I'll just, before I hand it off to John, I'll say that in Morrisville, we've had a lot of success. We've had Microsoft, just seems like the other day we were celebrating the announcement of 500 jobs. We've got, Syneos Health expanding, a number of companies coming into Morrisville, and we hope that continues. But John, I want to hand it over to you now. I want to thank you for doing this with me. We might be doing another one in a few weeks. And I want to thank everyone for attending. I'm now going to hand it off to John Loyack to talk a little bit about what we're going through in business, and then take some questions and talk about what we can do to make things better for all of us. John, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here today. We've spent a lot of time in my organization doing conversations like this, and so it's fascinating to me to see the type of reach that we can have using some of these new technological tools. So I want to thank you for pulling this together and giving me the opportunity to reach out to an audience of folks who I know are very, very interested in getting more assistance on a variety of different things. What I'd share with everyone is that my organization is the organization that's focused really on 5 core things. We are the group that houses the Visit NC team. That's the team that's focused on hospitality and tourism industries. And they're the folks who are tracking things like visitor spending in the state. Obviously, that's a piece of our business that's taken a major hit. We've got folks who are recruiting us into the state. We're still seeing a lot of opportunities there as well. And then the 3 groups that I manage, Steve gave you some background on this. I work exclusively with existing industry. So I work with businesses all over the state of North Carolina. And to be perfectly frank, in the last 30 days, very, very busy. So we've got a lot of activity going on. Wanted to share a couple of things with you all today about some of the resources that are out there. I also want to talk about some of the SBA programs. There is an update on that, but I want to share some tips with folks for what we think could be coming, and talk to you about a couple of things that are happening on the state and the local level as well. First of all, this is the kind of thing that is not taught in business school. Dealing with a pandemic outbreak like this and seeing its impact on businesses is not something that anybody ever imagined could have happened here in North Carolina, but it has. And so it is one of those times where groups like mine are mobilizing to reach out to you all, the business community, to help you in a variety of different ways. I want everyone on the call to be assured that there are a number of different resources that are out there that are there to help you all weather this particular storm. We've got 900,000 small business state of North Carolina that are going to be impacted by this directly. And so I want you folks these resources. I know that a lot of what people are dealing with right now has people wondering who to go to, who to answer questions, who do I turn for this. So I'd like to begin just by offering a number for our small business counseling team. And that number is 1-800-228-8443, 1-800-228-8443. That's our Business Link team at the Economic Development Partnership. That is a group of folks who are on the business end of a 1-800 number. They're also capable of taking internet inquiries through our website. But these are folks who are in place to help answer questions about what's impacting your business. In the best of times, these are the folks you call when you're starting up a business. And so for someone who is looking to open up a restaurant, for someone who is thinking about starting a lawn service, these are the people that you call to understand how to register your business with the state. How do you make sure you're paying your taxes properly? Things have obviously shifted significantly over the last 30 days. So this is the team that you call now to help understand unemployment insurance regulation. This is a group you can call to find out who to contact at the Department of Employment Security to make sure that your benefits are lined up the right way. These are the folks who you can call to understand what opportunities are out there for sole proprietors who may feel like they've been overlooked in some of this. And so as a starting point, I offer that number up to you all and recommend that you give them a ring as soon as you can. There's a number of different things that we've learned going through all of this, and there's some advice that I'd like to share with some of the businesses on the call. Number one, we sadly, we have a good bit of experience dealing with emergency situations like this. It's not something that necessarily impacts us here in Morrisville, but hurricane season is something that brings on the SBA, FEMA, and other emergency related resources each year here in North Carolina. And so we're used to working with the SBA and some of their emergency relief programs. With that, I would say there's a number of tips that we can share along those lines. This is something that's had a much greater impact, obviously. In a hurricane, we may see 18 to 20 counties that have been impacted. In this particular situation, all 100 counties in the state have been impacted in different ways. When people reach out to the SBA, and there's a number of different programs that have been available. Some of the funding has run out, but we're asking people to continue in the application process for some of these programs because additional funding could be coming from DC. But the first step really to kicking this process off is to organize your own data, to create and update a flexible budget and cash flow forecast that will focus on the next 90 days. That's really a very good starting point. One of the other things I always tell people is you've got to ask for help. I provided you the Business Link number just a moment ago, but what we tell people is lean on your local community, lean on other business owners, lean on your banker, your lawyer, your CPA. They're all hearing about different programs and seeing other businesses go through business experiences that are similar to yours. And so it's really important to look at all of these resources out there as an avenue to get you the answers to the questions that you've got. As a part of that SBA program, and I realize that we did have some changes yesterday when it was announced that the EIDL program was being put on hold temporarily, and the PPP program is one that Steve mentioned. The $350 billion has been committed to already in loans. The good news is 24,000 small businesses and nonprofits here in the state did get loans as a part of that PPP program. But as I mentioned earlier, we've got 900,000 small businesses, so clearly not everyone got the support they need as a part of this. But as additional funds are made available, we want to make sure that you all get that information so that you can continue to be a part of this. So assuming that some of these programs are refunded by the federal government, what I tell people is you've got to plan to pursue something like the EIDL program through the SBA. That's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. That's a basic loan program that the SBA comes to us with for situations like this. What we're seeing is a number of people have been having trouble getting through different banks for the PPP program and things like that. So we're recommending that you leverage relationships with more than one bank for some of this. On our website, we have information like a listing of the banks that we know are still working with new clients. And so this is the type of information that we can share through our website, through the 1-800 number I provided earlier, and I wanted to make sure that you all had this as well. So the SBA process is one that we continue to hear from businesses that there have been some challenges with the application process. I can tell you in my experience, I've seen things improve over the last 2 to 3 weeks, but I know some businesses have experienced some bumps along the way. 2 tips that I'd like to share today for just describing about this SBA process in general is, number one, the application, the number one reason for denial of your application is going to be an incomplete application. We know from the SBA that that's the number one reason that things get turned around. So before you even sit down to do the process, gather the information you're going to need. We're talking about things like previous year's tax returns. We're talking about payroll breakdown. We're talking about invoices, some of your rent payments, things like that that you're going to need. So basic financial information that you've got to have to get through this completed process. The other thing that we recommend to people is, and again, this is going to seem like a relatively basic thing, but this is just one of the little things that we see for businesses that have tried to get through this process. It is the application process with the SBA is one that is based on a physical address, because they're usually working with people in a specific area. So they need a physical address on that application. If you put a PO box, your application is going to be turned back to you. So these are just some of the little things that we've learned along the way that we'll share with you all as a part of this. You know, the SBA, the news yesterday wasn't necessarily encouraging to hear that the $349 billion set aside for the PPP program was already committed to. But we will stay alert for other programs that do come through. And so there's a couple of other programs I wanted to share some information about is, number one that was launched through an institution here in the state of North Carolina called the Golden Leaf Foundation. And that's the NC Rapid Recovery Program. That was one that launched 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago. And the Golden Leaf Foundation was working with a consortium of profit lenders to put that program together. There's about $15 million of funding available through that program, and it was committed in the next 48 hours. Now, the good news is over 1,500 applications did come through and businesses were able to take advantage of it. But we are now working with the state of North Carolina and our General Assembly to see additional funding made available for that same vehicle. And so the NC Rapid Recovery Program is one that we are anticipating will get additional funding. So for anyone who would like to consider that, what's perfect about that program is that's what we refer to as a bridge loan. The SBA process in general, we know is going to take somewhere from 20 to 30 days to get that, from the completed application process all the way through to funds coming into your accounts. This NC Rapid Recovery Program is a bridge loan that's designed to respond much more quickly. And so this consortium of nonprofit lenders, once an application is completed, is able to get funds out within 4 days afterwards. And so this is going to be a very important program. Maximum offer on some of these is somewhere between $25,000 to $50,000. But if someone's looking to pay rent, or if someone's looking to make payroll over the next month, this could be a really strong option. One of the things that these institutions recognize is that the SBA will continue to support us. So as a part of this program, this is a zero interest loan program. And so for the first 6 months, it's exactly what it suggests it to be. It is a bridge in between now and the time that some of the federal funds become available to you all. And so 0% over the first 6 months and 0 payments over the first 6 months. Ultimately, what it means is this is a loan that can provide funding to you, to your business, that will hold you over until the federal funding comes available. And so this is one, again, we're anticipating that the General Assembly is going to be helping by providing some additional funding to that. So that's one, and I'll follow up with that website, but I believe it's ncrapidrecovery.org. And finally, we're seeing a lot of cities that are now beginning to launch their own programs as well. The city of Charlotte has launched a program. The city of Apex has launched a program. I believe the city of Raleigh is considering something. And so we're beginning to see other programs that are now made available on the municipal level. And so we'll be providing more information to you all around that as well. These are just some of the programs that are out there and that are available. I've said that now has been a very, very busy time for us. We are helping some businesses shift. Some businesses that a few weeks ago were making bicycle equipment are now shifting to the manufacture of personal protection equipment. And so we're working with those businesses to help them make that shift. We've got a lot of fantastic resources out there to help businesses that are considering that pivot to personal protection equipment. I would say to the folks on this call, for the small business owners, stay alert to the programs that are available. We'll continue feeding information. Call this 1-800 number that I provided. But one thing that's very important is to continue to monitor the conditions of your own customers, as well as your own supply chain. What we know is, folks who have an understanding of what their sales pipeline is going to look like in the next couple of weeks, and folks who understand what the supply chain looks like, are the ones who are going to be able to best weather the storm. This is, for any of you out there who have some specific supply chain needs, if you're looking for a new vendor, if you've been working with someone overseas and that vendor seems to have gone away, we've got a team of people who can help you find replacements for some of the things, some of the pieces of your supply chain that may have fallen through. But that's just a handful of the things that that our team is doing with businesses right now. As I mentioned, we got a lot of folks statewide that we're trying to support. But Steve, at this point, I'd love to open things up for some questions.
So we're now going to get into the Q&A part. Before we go into that, I forgot to introduce myself for those who joined in case someone didn't know me. But my name is Steve Rao. I'm a senior member of the City Council of Morrisville. Served before my third term, served as Mayor Pro Tem. And I do want to thank our Mayor, TJ Cawley, and the council, my colleagues. We have a great team, and he has been working hard along with all of us to make sure that the government of Morrisville is continuing. We have our first virtual meeting on April 28th. We are in a stay-at-home order in Wake County, along with the state of North Carolina. But yesterday, we amended our own Town of Morrisville State of Emergency Proclamation to make sure we're in line with that. And we've closed all our public facilities, but we've kept our parks and greenways open. And we're just doing everything we can to make sure that we're supportive to not only Morrisville citizens, but the citizens of Triangle. And there's also a Town of Morrisville business continuity support on our Town of Morrisville website. So we're now gonna open it up to the Q&A. And if you need me or anyone, you can always email the council at townofmorrisville.org. So John, thank you for that great overview. We're now gonna open it up to questions. You can just type in your question or ask a question. So I'm gonna sort of bring my screen over here. Do we have any questions for John? Any feedback for John? John, I'm gonna start it off before maybe someone else jumps in. Could you elaborate on the cities? You mentioned the small business loan and the bridge, the Rapid Recovery Fund. Talk a little bit. I know you're going to be announcing more, but maybe a little bit about the cities. That would be helpful for us.
Sure. I think what the cities have recognized is that there is value in providing the type of program similar to what I described with the Golden Leaf Foundation, that NC Rapid Recovery Program. And so again, these are zero interest bridge loans that some of the cities have come up with. And so I mentioned Apex. I believe they're announcing this week a fund of about $1 million that will provide some microloans out to local businesses needing something to cover them before some of the federal funds become available. And this is common in the different emergency circumstances that we deal with, whether it's a hurricane or this type of situation. The one thing I'll say, Steve, is if you were to ask me what is keeping me awake at night, I would say that what my experience is that in a situation like a hurricane or what we're dealing with now, is I know one of the challenges for small businesses is going to be that they are exposed to predatory lenders. And so we've got a lot of business owners out there that are looking for any support they can get. They've turned to the federal government. Maybe those programs have come through, maybe they haven't. They've reached out for some of the bridge loans. Those are great, but we ran out of that funding in 48 hours. And so folks are looking for something to help them, again, to make payroll, to pay the rent this month. And so suddenly that magical email comes in, and it's some unknown vendor or unknown lender who's offering something. I would tell the small business owners of Morrisville to be very, very careful about some of these predatory lenders that can find their way into your inbox and provide you what seems like an offer that's too good to be true. If it does seem that way, it likely is. You may, and the small business owners on the call may be wondering, so what do I do? What is my answer for that? And what I would tell them is there's a number of different, probably in the neighborhood of 12 different nonprofit lenders that we work directly with. These are all federally certified lenders who are used to working with small businesses. Some of them are geographically based. Some of them have statewide coverage. But these are organizations like the Rural Center and their Thread Capital program, the Carolina Small Business Development Fund, the Self-Help Credit Union. These are all some local organizations. These are nonprofit lenders that you all can work with for some very small loans that you need to tide you over, to cover rent and things like that. And they have the capacity to turn things around very quickly. And so I'll follow up by providing you with a list of some of those nonprofit lenders that you can share with this audience.
Okay, great. We have a question from Daniel Chang. Daniel, we want to thank Daniel for being on the call. This is a great leader in our state. He's the head of the Chinese Business Association. Daniel, could you go ahead and type your question in for John? It's the first time I'm doing this, folks, so I don't know whether I see the question on my, John, do you see his question?
I do see it. I do see it. So Daniel's asking, Daniel has a client who's looking to set up a PPE factory in North Carolina and is wondering if there's any incentives from the city or state level or an SBA loan to support such a business. And Daniel, thank you for that question. The answer is yes. This is, even though we've seen some things from an economic perspective that we never would have predicted here in North Carolina is still open for business. And so we are very, very interested in meeting with folks who are thinking about the potential for a manufacturing facility here in North Carolina. I'll follow up with providing some information, but the lead international business development contact for my team is a gentleman named Corey Howard, and I'll get his information over to you so that he can follow up with you directly. But to answer your question specifically, the answer is yes. So the state of North Carolina does offer incentives for any manufacturer who's considering opening up a facility here in North Carolina, but it is contingent on job creation. So what I would say for the client is we will need to have an understanding of how many jobs they're willing to commit to, what type of investment they're looking for, what kind of building they're looking for, what kind of wages they'll be providing with their employees. Once we get that information, we can do the rest, but we'd be very interested in bringing this here. And I think what you've tapped on is something that I think we're going to see a lot more of. Here in North Carolina, we have this fantastic history of heritage industries like the textile industry, the furniture industry, and agriculture. We know how to cut and sew better than many of the states around us and have a fantastic history of that. A lot of those jobs over the last have gone away, but they used to exist here. I was fascinated to learn recently that out in RTP, which has recently celebrated its 60th anniversary, industry companies out there. Back before the likes of IBM, United Technologies, and others came out into the park. But we are very interested in bringing this back. The apparel industry is not coming back. We know that there are pieces of that industry that have gone away, and we're not anticipating that. But I will say that I'm beginning to hear that on a federal level, the U.S. Congress is now looking at legislation that would require hospitals here to be able to purchase some made in the USA product. And so I think the PPE industry is one that will come back pretty significantly here. And North Carolina wants to be ready for opportunities like the one you described.
That's a great question. And Daniel, thank you for all your leadership you provide. And I know John and I have a number of great events with the Chinese business community. And I also want to give a shout out to the China-American Friendship Association. Yesterday I was with them. They donated over 30 N95 masks to Triangle hospitals. I mean, we just are seeing so many businesses stepping up. Swagat Indian restaurant delivering food to our first responders, and just a lot of restaurants and businesses. And also Tom Snyder from Internet of Things, Riot, NC Riot, where technology and innovation and where the kinds of technologies that we can provide. We have a lot of startups in our region, and I'm trying to reach out to these startups to say now's the time to come in and be creative and start solving problems. And I think that's, we're lucky in the Triangle. We're very rich and abundant with these kind of great minds, right, John? So, so are there any other questions for John? I know we got 9 other participants. I know we have one great business, the exercise coach. Man, we're all missing our exercise, and Barbara and John Blair have a business in Morrisville. It's like a one-on-one kind of, exercise. I think we're hoping that some of these gyms can open up sooner than later. I'm getting old. I'm almost 50, but I've been running every day, and now my feet and knees are really starting to hurt. So, the gyms is one area, John. People getting very antsy. Tennis clubs, fitnesses. Barbara has a question. She says her small business is ready to open and follow all the guidelines. Barb, do you have a question? Do you see that question, John?
I do. I do think that that's something that we're going to see more discussion on over the next 2 weeks, is what are the guidelines that we're going to need to follow as we begin to go back. My organization, for example, was talking about the possibility of providing masks to employees as we begin to segue back to our work in an office. And what are we going to need in a facility like any kind of exercise facility? You can imagine the concerns, but what I will say is this. What we know right now is that there are significant regulations in place that require a lot of our food manufacturing facilities to hit different OSHA and other regulatory requirements. I don't think that we're going to see major changes within an industry like yours, but I will say things are going to change. I think we're going to see new technologies that will allow us to take our own temperature as we come across the threshold of a building, and things that will be able to provide us with cleanser in a way that we didn't have previously. This is people tell me that I have a face made for radio, but I can't imagine covering half of this beautiful face with a mask. But to be frank, I do think that we're going to be working in a situation where, or living in a situation where, we are wearing masks more. I was listening to an interview with I'm blanking on our national infectious Tony Fauci. And he was saying I'm not going to shake hands anymore. I mean, major things are going to change. Significant things are going to change, and that's what we will have to adapt to. But like Steve, I'm looking forward to getting back in the gym myself. So I look forward to the day when I can come over.
Yeah, me too. I'm thinking about trying their facility out in a couple of weeks. But we want to thank them they've been very supportive of our community, and we want to thank all the Morrisville businesses. Do we have any other people? I know we have some restaurants possibly joining. I mean, I think a lot of people are just concerned about, we're doing everything we can, John, to support our small businesses. I know Liz Johnson's been doing some nice Facebook posts. I'm actually craving a little Sicilian pizza because she put one up there of a good Sicilian pizza from Georgina's and Firebirds, Vicky Schwager Johnson. But I mean, I think that's where people get scared, is just the fact that, how long can they go without restaurants being open? And I guess you've given us a lot of resources that they can look at, and, phone numbers to call. Are there any other questions, anybody, before we wrap up? And we're going to be doing another one of these next Friday, where we're going to have one with Richard Boyd, a great North Carolina entrepreneur, on AI and machine learning and how he's building brains to deal with COVID-19. Quite amazing, using analytics and data so we can be better responsive to getting visibility in terms of just social distancing patterns and where to get supplies, and and then on May 1st, I'm hosting the Startup Summit. This year we were going to do it at Wake Tech, but it's going to be virtual. We've got a great line of speakers from David Gardner. Going to be talking about angel funding, to Scott Wingo closing us out. And then we're going to have a lot of interesting panels on how to find a job during this disruption economy, and also where entrepreneurs can fit in. If they have a great idea, how do they bring those ideas in to solve a problem, but in the meantime, maybe even create another company? And so, these are things that, and I've got a lot of guests wanting to join these town hall meetings, but do we have any other questions for John Loyack?
Steve, there was something you mentioned that I'll just make this as a final comment. As much as we've seen hundreds and thousands of unemployment insurance applications recently, and it is nothing short of tragic. What I would say is there are businesses out there that are expanding. And so what I'd love the audience to know is, for anyone in your community that is hurting right now and is looking for work, there are some immediate opportunities. They are all listed on our EDPNC website. So it's edpnc.com. And, some of the businesses that we see coming through first were restaurants who are able to get back online. Some of them are within the hospitality industry. And then we began to see kind of the food logistics. And so a lot of the grocery stores, Amazon, Walmart, and others, these are organizations that are hiring. If you've got a college student who's come home and is getting ready for summer break, we've got businesses that are hiring thousands of jobs. Harris Teeter was looking to hire 5,000 folks across the state. We're also seeing some manufacturers that are needing to post a job. So if someone is looking for immediate job opportunities, please take a look at our website and feel free to point your neighbors in that direction as well.
Oh, yeah, we want to thank you for that. I noticed that you all are doing that. And also there are so bandwidth.com recently announced 1,100 expand in the triangle. So recruitment hasn't stopped, and are out there still working with Tony Copeland, our Commerce Secretary, our Governor, and our EDP partnerships. Ryan Combs, I'm going to be reaching out to him later today to see if he's okay. But all of these people are doing it to bring. So we're still competing for business, right? We're still open for business.
Exactly.
This opponent, it's an invisible opponent. We're hoping sports come back. We missed the sound of a buzzer. I'm going to miss my strawberries and cream. I'm a former college player. It's not easy.
Not this year.
This will be the first time in my life I can't remember Wimbledon. How do you begin in July without center court? You're a tennis fan, right? That's tough, but I think we're going to close out. I don't see any other questions. If you do have any questions, John, we'll close out with, first of all, if you have any feedback for me, you can email me at srout@townofmorrisville.org. You can email the whole council at Town of Morrisville website. And just remind everyone to stay home, stay safe. And if you have any ideas of things you'd like to address in the town hall, let me know. I'm good. John, you had given a number for them to call if they need anything. So just like if you can give that number again, and then we'll wrap up, and we'll be back in a few weeks. John and I will be doing this again.
Sure. And that number is 1-800-228-8443. And we've got folks who are on the line right now trying to help small businesses in any way they can.
Well, on that note, I just want to thank John Loyack for giving his time. for us today and his whole team, including Chris Chung, and we pray for everyone being safe. I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank our governor, our first line responders, all the people that are helping our state. And, you know, every day I've been running and I listen to music and I actually read the lyrics of the music. And so last week I was on a Queen run every week, Kenny Rogers, to celebrate his life. But today I ran to my favorite, because of all these immigrant communities, my favorite song from Hamilton, My Shot. And the favorite line of that is, like my country, I'm young, scrappy, and hungry. And so on that note, I say, you know what? We're scrappy and we're going to fight. We're going to beat this pandemic. And we've got to look at the finish line, which is we're going to find a vaccine, we're going to find a cure, and we're going to figure out a way to get back to normal. So it's not going to be like this forever. And I just had to end my week on a positive note. It's not easy for any of us living like this, but hopefully next year we can do a town hall with John Loyack in the town hall.
I look forward to it.
Although his office moved to Raleigh, not in near Morrisville anymore. But we appreciate that. Well, be safe, John, you and your family. Everyone, thank you for joining. And if there's any other questions, we send them via email, and we're going to be announcing our next few town halls in the next few days. John, thank you and be safe. We'll be bringing you back in a few weeks.
Thanks very much. Take care, everyone.